At one point in my life, I decided to take some piano lessons as an adult, and I was playing my little song, and the instructor said, you're doing fine, Marty, but you might want to breathe. And I was like, I can't do one more thing right now. I got everything. So I don't know how that happens, but it's cool. It does kind of want to maybe have a little tambourine or something, just to spice up the preaching a bit. Good church music. Yep. Not traditional church music. I don't know if you've noticed, but the Pope's in town. And so there's a lot going on around that. I love this Pope, I have to say. I really love his energy and what he's bringing forward. But I was just thinking, I'm so glad I chose the path I did. I don't even know how you keep the outfit straight, although I would like one of those little Pope mobiles. That might be kind of fun. Yes, I do. It's so true. All right. I have a talk here. I'm going to give it. Why not? As long as we're here. So an interesting thing happened on the way to the center this morning. So I had this agreement with the divine that I will do my preparation and then I'm willing to let that go. And so sometimes I prepare these lovely and wonderful talks, as in today, and then I'm told what I'm going to actually talk about, so I surrendered to that. But it all seems to work out okay. We've been looking at this idea around achieving mastery, about being in an ongoing process. You see, there's an illusion that we reach a destination. Now, as a child, I believed that was going to be either heaven or some other alternative. And the way things were going, I was pretty sure what the alternative route was going to be. And then you're done. In metaphysics, there's sort of sometimes that same energy, like once you just get your consciousness right, you get to be done. But my experience has been that we're never done. It's only about the journey. And once we achieve one level of understanding and awareness, all it does is open up a new vista of new possibility and potential. So we begin to understand that we are always going to be on this journey, so why not enjoy the journey, right? And why not, rather than try and label it as good or label it as bad, just simply be in the process of unfolding. A friend of mine said to me recently, and I love this, he said, there's no good experiences, there's no bad experiences, there's learning experiences. We bring the good or bad to it. But I've noticed there's a process that we often talk about in our community about spiritual growth and understanding and levels of consciousness. Now, even by trying to identify it where it's kind of not it, but we're going to do it anyways. And we talk about how very often in our journey we begin and we operate from a level of consciousness which we would call the victim consciousness. Because the victim believes that things happen to them. And so, we don't know that we have power and authority and control over the unfolding of our life. And we think that things are just happening, and when good things happen, we call it luck. And when bad things happen, we call it punishment or some karma or some other thing. And so we're always going in, particularly in that level of consciousness, we're always labeling things as either good or bad. Everything's right and wrong, everything's left and right, all that sort of thing. But then we realize, through whatever means, perhaps it's, in my case, I started reading these books called Positive Mental Attitude books, Think and Grow Rich. And they started saying things about your thinking determines your experience. And the way you approach reality is how reality begins to approach you. And that sort of thing. What you seek is seeking you. And then they imply that in order to make some changes, you're going to have to change yourself. Oh. Immediately back to victim. Because, the benefit of being a victim is you get a lot of attention. Have you ever noticed that? Now, I don't know that you know any of these people, but you might, who kind of seem to revel in the drama of their lives. And so we're not judging anybody. Well, maybe you are. I don't know. I can't tell. I'm judging a little bit, but I'm willing to let it go. No, I'm not. But you realize there comes a point in your life that you say, either my life is going to work because I'm figuring out some things, or this is going to be the way it looks. You know that great line that says, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Universal truth. It's in the Bible. Look it up. James 3:12. I don't know. Well, there is a passage, but I won't go there, right? Because if we're going to change our lives, we must change. And so the first rule of spiritual authority is realizing we must be responsible for our lives. You see, Kathy Hearn was here, wonderful, and said to us, unless you cannot heal what you are not willing to be responsible for. So understand there's a whole different energy between being responsible and blame. If you watch the news for more than about 15 minutes, what you realize is there's a prevailing message, and it's this: something's wrong, whose fault? Notice that? Always something's wrong, somebody's to blame. Spiritual awareness and authority says, no, I must be willing to accept responsibility for my life, which means that I have the ability to respond. It means I have the ability to co-create. And now I move into the next level of creation, of co-creation, because what we begin to understand is that literally this universe is conforming to our consciousness. And so what we believe, what we think, what we feel, what we believe is what is attracted into our experience. And again, I always go to the Bible for spiritual authority because that's the way I was raised. But Jesus was said to people these very powerful words when somebody came to him and said, will you heal this? And he said, do you believe I can do this? He said, of course. And he said, then according to your faith, it shall be done. Hear that. According to your faith, it shall be done. He later says, it is done unto you as you believe. I often say it'd be so much better if it was just done as he believed, because clearly he had it going on. But no, we get to cooperate in this process. There's another story, if you keep reading, and I know you do. I know you're all like me on Saturday nights, got your Bible open, getting ready. Where the story is that the disciples go into a town and they're unable to perform any miracles because of their disbelief. You see, it's not enough to be able to work the miracle, you have to have a joining. So we realize, then I have to be responsible for what's happening in my life at whatever level it's happening. Again, no blame, no shame, but simply entering into that consciousness so that I can heal because I'm owning my part in what's going on. It's a beautiful and wonderful thing. And then we begin to understand and discover we have spiritual power, we have spiritual authority. We can visualize something and it becomes our experience. I loved walking in this morning, seeing the landscaping out front, which just last week was but a drawing on a wall. It was an idea, and now it's in form, which is always creation. We visualized it, we created it, we went to work, boom. Thank you, by the way, for all those that worked on that amazing project. But you see, once we get there, we are not done. There's more to this story, because as our consciousness unfolds, then what we begin to do is realize that there's an intelligence at work that is wanting to express itself more fully. There's not a power of good and a power of evil, and one's trying to get you and one's trying to harm you, but rather there's just a universal intelligence, and we live in that intelligence. You see, the very nature of life, if you were to look at it, is to fulfill itself. And so whatever form or whatever vessel life takes, it has an inherent capacity to unfold. We know this because we can take a seed and we can plant it in the ground and we can nurture it and care for it. And somehow that infinite intelligence that resides in the tiniest things grows into the plant. We don't say, well, God must have really liked that plant. Boy, that plant got lucky. Right? We know that's the nature of life. When we begin to understand that, when we start to move out of dualistic thinking into unitive thinking, we realize the very nature of life itself is to reveal itself. And perhaps it has a bigger, grander, greater idea of what's possible for me. Maybe I can allow the God seed within me to grow and to prosper and to fulfill itself. But it becomes a new way of being in communion with the divine. And so we move from visualizing, trying to tell the universe what to do, but to begin to listen to what the universe is trying to do through us. So we have a visioning process where we ask these questions. How must I grow in consciousness? Who must I become? What must I release? What must I let go of in order to realize this greater state of being? And even there, we're not done. There's another level of consciousness that the great mystics and masters have reached through the ages, which is the I am consciousness, the unitive consciousness that doesn't even see separation, is no longer even working through me, but it is as me. And so when Jesus comes to the people and says, he that has seen me has seen the Father, he's not talking from an ego state of being. When the Buddha says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, he's not talking about himself as a person. He's talking about a state of consciousness. And so when we ultimately move to that state of awareness and understanding, we just simply realize our oneness with the divine. And so a beautiful thing happens. Now, in any given time, at any given place, we may find ourselves at one or another level. Sometimes we have very high consciousness around love and relationship and very victim consciousness around money. Right? You ever notice that? You can feel really enlightened and all together in one area of your life and just a hot mess in another. Right? It's all right. We're not done yet. It's all good. You just keep be working and understanding that we're evolving in consciousness. We're growing and becoming. So I had a realization when Dr. Kathy was here and we were working on this co-creation. She tells me that this information was presented to us before, but I am certain that it was not. Just as I am certain that Ernest Holmes keeps adding pieces to the Science of Mind text that were not there just last year when I taught the course. I do not know how he does that, but somehow he's doing it, right? Because what she spoke to was how a community goes through those stages of consciousness. And it was an enlightening and insightful understanding for me. You see, about a little over a year ago, we had hit a little cash flow issue with the center. And so we decided we'd better take some action because we like to have the top number be higher than the lower number, right? And so we decided to make some adjustments in staff and all that sort of thing. And in that process, when we made those changes, we realized that there was an issue. And the issue was that our former bookkeeper was doing what I would call a form of reverse tithing. Some might call it embezzlement, but I'm trying to be highly spiritual and aware. A little for the center, a little for me, a little for, right? So I make light of it. It's been a pretty painful year, but because it shook not only that the money was gone, but it shook at a foundational core level, trust and awareness and understanding. It became a very, very painful year. I said, I've spent a lot of time on my knees this last year because I needed to grow through it. I came to the community at one point and said, I am responsible for this. And people would come up to me afterwards and say, well, we don't blame you. I said, I'm not to blame for it. Hear me again. We can only heal what we are willing to be responsible. It happened on my watch. I'm the big cheese. If I'm not responsible, who is? Right? And so what we got to look at was our systems were really good up until a point, and then there was a glaring error. We always had multiple people counting the money, but only one person depositing the money. And that became an opportunity. We've learned. We've grown. So over the course of the year, we took appropriate action at the spiritual level. We took appropriate action at a physical level. Tomorrow morning, I believe, according to the legal system, this young woman will enter into a plea agreement. She'll plead guilty to the charges and begin a restitution program. So that piece gets to be complete, at least on our end. Yay. So we can have that be done. But here's what I know. Everything that happens in life is happening for us if we're willing to see a greater good. And what I've watched happen in our community is some really amazing spiritual things and some very human things. Turns out the problem with humans, they do human things. Right? But what the insight and wisdom and awareness that I came to was that in this looking at this group consciousness, moving through these levels of consciousness, the first level for a group is follow the leader. Look at our terminology around churches, pastors, and shepherds of the flock. I got to tell you, by the way, you are not a very good flock. You're way too independent. You have your own ideas, your own opinion. Like, let's go here. No, we don't want to go there, right? So, glad I didn't choose that model, right? But again, that's the level sometimes of thinking that you tell us what we should know. You guide us into our thing. And then I always love this when people come to me and say, well, Reverend Marty, I'm not feeling spiritually fed. And I say, bless you, my child, because the Pope's in town and it seems very appropriate. But I think, is it really my job to feed you? I mean, you are an adult, you know? If you're a baby, I'll get you a bottle, but you're an adult, right? But there's that thing that you are responsible for my spiritual growth. Then, lo and behold, a new level of consciousness emerges, and people begin to move into that second level of co-creation, where we individually go, wow, I have influence over my world. And if I visualize and affirm and declare and pronounce, then I begin to create a new reality. And so what begins to happen with that in the group is they say, oh yeah, well, I have my own idea. Let us challenge the leader. Still me. It's when it gets really good. I've worked with churches before. When it gets really good, then they overthrow the leader because they're going to take power. They're going to take control. They're going to get their life back. So, oh yes, trust me. There's a list of you. I have you. I just say we're going to add excommunicative process to this whole thing. Yes, absolutely. And so what the clarity was, aha, that makes sense. We're growing, we're becoming. And some people have grown through the process and some people had to go away. And it's okay. It's okay. We are a community that is here by choice. But here is the golden good news. When you emerge through that, then you unify around a common vision. It's a divine ideal that is guiding us. So rather than being led by a person, we begin to be guided by a divine ideal, and we come together in co-creation and in partnership around revealing the new ideal. You see, in individual life, sometimes when we're in that second level of consciousness where we think that, okay, I can create the life I want, and you, my spousal unit, no longer work for me, so I will create a new one. I'm telling you, it happens. I'm just telling you. Sometimes people do it 4 or 5 times just to make sure, right? Until you realize, oh, maybe it's not about them. Maybe it's about me. You see, I've seen this in years. I've been in this ministry for 25 years. I've worked with churches that think, boy, if we could just get the right minister in here, then we'll be great. I worked with a group that had like 21 ministers in 18 years. Oddly enough, they couldn't find the right one. Imagine, right? So the aha, the understanding, the insight, the awareness was like, oh, cool. We have moved through the discontent, whatever you want to call that, to move to this next level of understanding. And so then I realized, aha, this is good. Because I've always said from day one, this is not about me. It's amazing how many people never heard that. Right? This is about us. This is about what we co-create together. But you see, consciousness evolves, and it's been a process. And so what I'm looking at is how that seeming tragedy has also been a great gift and a blessing. We have become a stronger, healthier, more unified community through it. It had a cleansing process because people that were not willing to do the deeper work got to go find a place that worked for them. I love them and bless them. There's no right and wrong in it. But those who have stayed through this are committed to the greater ideal, to the larger something. So then what starts to happen? Then, out of the blue, somebody drops a $20,000 cashier's check in our box. Completely anonymous. First time that's ever happened in my ministry. Now, there's anonymous gifts, but I always know who that person is. Somehow you track it. But this is like somebody snuck into the building and left 20 grand. I know. So thank you. And if you're in the audience, just remember I've been visioning 50. So, you're... You can drop off the other 30 whenever you want. It's cool. Right? We get this thing with Don Jose Ruiz that's becoming this massive thing in the community. We did this event yesterday, this expo event, which was amazing. And thank you for everybody that participated in that. That is a vision that I've held for 25 years about creating community that is so much more than just science of mind, where science of mind is an integral part, but that is meeting us at every level of mind, body, and spirit. A holistic place where people come together to reveal wholeness. That was what yesterday was about. A landscape project gets done. Money starts to flow again. The World Parliament of Religions is coming to where? Salt Lake City, along with all these amazing people. The Centers for Spiritual Living is having their convention. Where? Salt Lake City, right? We're having the president of the International Centers for Spiritual Living will be speaking here. The president of the Associated New Thought Network will be speaking here. We're becoming a place, kids. Maybe this is the place. I'm just saying. Oh, gosh. Have I not offended anyone yet? Because I want to make sure I get to everybody before this thing is through. Right? So, looking at the totality of this, here's what I love. Independently of this, so this court date is tomorrow. That should be the final point for us anyways. We have this forgiveness workshop set up by Cliff Edwards, who's coming in tomorrow night. So if you have any unresolved things, that would be a perfect opportunity to let that go. You see, we can't afford to be unforgiving. And I loved how we've handled this, because we've dealt at a spiritual level, which is where the work needs to be done, but we didn't ignore it. We didn't pretend like it didn't happen. We didn't, it hasn't been pleasant. That was not my funnest moment. But you know what? We made it. And we should be proud of ourselves. Give ourselves a hand. So we're stronger, we're healthier, we're smarter, we're wiser in every way. And I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful for this teaching. I don't know if I hadn't been grounded in my spiritual practice the way I have been, that this was not a fun year. I'm not going to even lie about that. It was not fun, but it was good. And it was something so powerful. We can't determine everybody else's karma, but we can our own. And so we've walked through a situation with grace and with dignity and ease. And every one of us can know that, again, there's no destination that you get to and then it's all easy sailing. But when we can work from the consciousness that rather labels good or bad, but just says, what is this here for me to learn? How do I need to grow? How can I become more? You see, Mahatma Gandhi said something very powerful for us when he said, you must be the change you wish to see in the world. Not you must change the world, but you must first embody the consciousness of the thing you wish to see expressed in the world. So we can't afford to carry anger and resentment and hatred into the world thinking that that will give us a more unified, expansive, expressive life. It's just absolutely contrary to the laws of life. It'd be like going out there and stomping all those fresh little plants and go, now grow, right? It doesn't work so well. It really doesn't. You gotta love. You gotta let go. You got to learn what to do with manure. There's another Martyism for you. Someday in my book. All right? So, I don't know if this has meaning for you, but I knew I needed to speak of this because I know one of the powerful things we need to do is come to completion. A chapter is coming to completion so that a new chapter, a more powerful, a more expansive, a more exciting chapter can be revealed. So I'm grateful to each one of you. I love this Pope because he keeps saying wherever he goes, please pray for me. And so I want to say thank you for being a blessing in my life and ask you if you'll pray for me. Let us pray together. As we simply breathe into this moment, into the ever-present awareness of the reality of divine life, the one that is forever and ever expressing in and through and as all creation. This holy presence, this power, this thing we call God, everywhere present, always available. And because there is but one, we know that each of us exists as a point of light within the whole. So we remember this moment. We remember that it is the very one life that is breathing itself through our breath, that is beating its heart through our heart, that is expressing in and through and as us in every way. And as we have this simple remembrance, there is peace. We know that the word that is spoken here is spoken from the consciousness of oneness. That the divine is working for us, through us, and as us right now. It makes my heart glad and joyful to speak the word of truth. To recognize the presence of wholeness is the only reality. And to know that that wholeness reveals itself as health, as well-being, as vitality. To know that this one life is the very presence of divine love. That this love that is forever and ever giving of itself, pouring itself into existence. The divine existing in a sea of limitless possibility. Giving of itself, making itself known. And so as we enter into that consciousness, we know that there is no need for fear, no need for unforgiveness, but rather we can choose to love graciously and fully, extending the heart of compassion to all that we see and all that we know. We release anything which no longer serves us, to walk in the light of truth, in the light of divine love. We know that we are abundant beings, for we are one with the very source and substance of all that is. And so graciously we give and joyously we receive of the infinite bounty that lies before us. We open our hearts and our minds to experience our greater good. I can simply invite you to enter deeply into this moment, to recognize your oneness with the divine, to ask if there's any area of unforgiveness that might be released, that healing might occur, that love be made manifest through us right now. And speaking this word of truth, I do so with a grateful and joyous heart. I give thanks for the many blessings, the blessings of this spiritual community, where we journey together into a greater awareness and understanding of the truth of who we are. I know that this community stands as a bright light of healing, of truth, of love, of satisfying self-expression. And we serve those who most benefit from what we offer. We extend that blessing to our brothers and sisters around the planet. We recognize and celebrate the brotherhood and sisterhood of all humanity. We hold a high vision for a planet at peace, for a world that works for all, where love, joy, and peace are the order of the day. And as is our custom and our tradition, we bless all priests, all rabbis, all ministers, all teachers of every faith. For we know and celebrate there are many pathways to the divine. And wherever greater spiritual awareness and unfoldment is taught and practiced, we name it good. We bless it. So how grateful I am to know this truth, to bear witness for a law of mind that operates upon the consciousness that we have established, bringing forth the highest good for all concerned. Always in perfect timing, always in divine right order. And knowing that it is so, I simply give thanks and allow it to be as together we say, and so it is.